Hey everyone, welcome to our video about the size of cells. So, you might have thought along this time when we've been talking about cells and organelles and cell membrane, exactly how small are cells. So, let's take a look. This website shows you the couple of kind of familiar objects and then how big cells are in comparison to that. So this is about the size of 12-point font when it's printed out, a coffee bean, a grain of rice, a sesame seed, some objects you might have seen before. Let's zoom in. As we zoom in, we can see a grain of salt is pretty small. Like if you think about it, you can see salt with your eye, but like you have to really look to see just one grain of salt. And smaller than a grain of salt is the first cell here, the amoeba proteus. Amoeba is a type of eukaryotic cell that is in the protist kingdom. And we'll talk more about them later in the school year. And from there, you can see a paramecium. That's also a protist, which is part of the eukaryotic complex cells, but it's in the protist kingdom. And then here you can start to see the largest human cell, which is a human egg cell. So let's backtrack a little bit. Grain of salt is very big compared to a human egg cell. And like I said, human eggs are the largest human cell. So compare that to a couple of other types of cells. This is a sperm cell used for fertilization, a photoreceptor cell, and a skin cell. And then can you just see that red blood cell? It's very small there. Those are all smaller cells than the human egg. If we zoom in further, you can start to see that smaller red blood cell, and then you can even see a yeast cell. This is Baker's yeast, and yeast is actually a type of fungus, or it's categorized with the fungus kingdom, and that's kind of interesting. And that yeast is about the same size as an X chromosome, and an X chromosome, which you can see there, contains some of your DNA. Everybody has X chromosomes. So males have an X and a Y, and females have two X's. If we zoom in further, we can see a smaller cell, which is E. coli, bacteria cells. So you can see that bacteria cells are much smaller than human cells. And next to the bacteria, you can see that a mitochondria is actually about the same size as a bacteria, and they look kind of similar. And we'll talk more about that in a couple weeks. You can also see a lysosome, and as we zoom in even further, you can see viruses, which are not actually living things, but these things are all viruses: phage, HIV, measles, and influenza, and hepatitis, and rhinovirus, which causes a lot of nose colds, stuffy noses. If you keep zooming in, you can see a ribosome right there. And then this is a hemoglobin, which is a type of protein. That's an antibody, which is a type of protein. This is tRNA. It's a chemical that helps make proteins. And then if we keep zooming in, you can see a phospholipid. Remember, that's part of the phospholipid bilayer of the cell membrane. You can see glucose, which is a carbohydrate. You can see adenine, which is a type of nucleic acid, methionine, which is an amino acid, which is part of the protein category. And then if we keep zooming in, you can see a water molecule and even a carbon atom. So that's very, very small, and we can zoom back out and you'll start to see how the size of cells, there's our first cell that we see, E. coli, how that compares to some of the small things that you're familiar with, like salt, sand, coffee, or printed text. All right, next up, here's a little background information for part of the activity that you're going to look at in your discussion this week. So, background information. The smallest objects that can be seen by the human eye are about 0.1 millimeters long. Some single cell organisms are just big enough that you could see them. A human egg is about 0.12 millimeters in diameter, but the vast majority of cells in your body and the cells that form bacteria are too small to see without a microscope. Usually, when a cell gets too large, it divides or stops growing. Cells remain small because all materials that are exchanged between the cell and its environment, like oxygen and glucose, must pass through the cell membrane. If materials cannot be exchanged efficiently, then the cell could die. So here's a visual representation. I know I'm a visual person, many of you are too. So here are three cubes that can help us understand why cells stay so small. We have box 1, box 2, and box 3. And let's look at the surface area and the volume and then compare those. When we're talking about cells being efficient, moving materials in and out, they need to have a good surface area to volume ratio. So the surface area of box 1 right here is 6 centimeters squared using our formula. The volume is 1 centimeter cubed, and the ratio is 6-1. So think about a ratio like a tug of war. On one side of the rope, you have 6 people. On the other side, 1 person. Those 6 people have pretty good odds of winning. So the ratio 6-1 is a pretty strong ratio, pretty high ratio. So that's the ratio of surface area to volume in this first cube. And if you think about it, think about maybe like a water molecule in the middle of this cube, and it needs to get out to the edge of the cube. So it moves towards the edge of the cube, and it doesn't take that much effort to get to the outside because it's a relatively small box. Next up, box 2, surface area 24 centimeters, volume 8 centimeters. The ratio is 24-8, which can be reduced to 3-1. So again, think about this like tug of war. 3 guys on one side, 1 guy on the other. The 3 guys still have a pretty good chance of winning, but did these guys have as good of a chance of winning as the box 1 guys that were 6-1 ratio? No. So 6-1 is a better surface area to volume ratio in box 1 than 3-1. And think about that. If you had a water molecule right in the middle of this box number 2, it's going to take a lot more effort for it to get out to the edge of that box or the edge of the cell compared to if you had a water molecule in the middle of this one. It doesn't take as much distance or effort. Box 3, the biggest one, do you think it's going to be better or worse? Well, the surface area is 54 centimeters squared, the volume's 27 centimeters cubed, and the ratio is 54-27, or 2-1. It actually gets worse. So your worst surface area to volume ratio occurs in this box 3, which is the biggest cube, and it would take the most effort for a water molecule in the middle, right exactly in the middle, to make it to the edge of that cube. So cells stay small so that they can have a better surface area to volume ratio, which makes it easier for materials like water or oxygen or carbon dioxide to get from the middle of the cell to the outside of the cell. So, best, most efficient one there, the smallest one. Thanks for listening. I hope you're going to enjoy Thanksgiving break. I know we've all been looking forward to it. You only have one more required assignment for this week. It's the discussion. There are no KIA or lab activity assignments this week, so enjoy the break. And if you'd like to, please participate in our Thankful Thanksgiving optional assignment. This is going to be done as a do now for the hybrid students, but if you're online, you could absolutely do this at home. Write a letter or even a text to somebody in your life, a family member, a guidance counselor, a coach, a friend, etc., somebody who makes you feel grateful. Tell that person that you appreciate what they do for you. Give that person the letter or send them a text when you see them again. Or you could mail it to them or even just text them a picture of your letter if you write a letter. But basically, show your gratitude on this year for Thanksgiving. It's been a unique year, but we can still find people and things that we're grateful for. So see if you can participate in this activity. Thank you.